So in our first, or in our discussion group number 1, we had a topic, creation of demand for culture, creative partnerships for schools and museums. I think that we had a very cozy discussion group. We did a quick survey and we discovered that we had representatives from museums, educational sector, cultural sector. I think one person who raised a hand, and as I asked whether we have artists in the room, and there were quite a number, I think 1/3 of the audience who define themselves as policymakers because they represent the Ministry of Culture or the Ministry of Education. Our 3 presenters were very inspiring, I think, for the diverse audience. So we had Ida Brandholt Lundgaard from Denmark, and she shared her insights from the program they implement in Denmark with museums. We had Milda Bačkiūtė from Lithuania, and Milda presented Creative Partnerships project in Lithuania, and Sibylle Linke from Germany presented a very interesting program on cultural agents working with schools. The titles of the presentations were, as you can see in the slide, and all 3 presenters shared general information on the projects and programs that they represent, and the linking aspect of the 3 presentations was educational programs through cultural and creative agents who come into schools and bring in, I hope, a slightly different culture and slightly different perspectives into the learning and teaching processes in schools. And this actually is something that a spectrum of countries are practicing in long-term projects. So we all, I think, found out that long-term projects that last for 3-5 years have much more impact on the processes in educational institutions than a short-term project. So I took a liberty to use the slides from presenters' PowerPoint presentations because I had a very little time to prepare. So I picked up the slides that I think summarize what they were talking about, and as this conference, I understand, is focusing on sustainability and impact in general. So here's a slide from Ida's presentation, and through her talk, I think she touched upon very interesting aspects that relate to institutions, to society at large, and also in general to educational and cultural sectors that work together through institutions such as museums that are learning spaces and in modern context probably also are going through certain changes and trying to look at what their audiences need and how they build on the needs to attract new audiences and actually attract also long-established audiences to the work that they've been doing. So I'm not very sure whether you can read the slide from afar, but in terms of institutions, all institutions, I guess, museums and schools and any other institution that works in culture or in education need to develop as a learning organization, first of all, and also it means investment into staff, and not only into staff knowledge, but also into staff understanding how they can contribute to the benefits of the programs that they involved in. In terms of society at large, we are in the age when everybody understands that knowledge and information are not the only sectors or the only mediums that we want to invest in. Competences are probably the key word that now educational systems and educational institutions need to look at and invest in. And again, the cooperation partnerships of cultural and educational institutions can give many more solutions to providing the competences to young learners when they work together. In all three, I would say, projects, but cultural agents and creative partnerships are the two projects that work, I think, on a very similar concept. Mentioned that the impact is huge, and here I'm sharing Milda's slide. The impact is on all three target audiences, I would say: pupils, teachers, and schools as an institution. And here is something that I think in the morning was explained very clearly. It's something that counts, but it's not very easy to count. So all three item points, if I may say so, on the slide actually go through change, and pupils and teachers experience this emotional change that, as Milda mentioned, is not that easily taken up by people and by institutions especially, because this is something that is very private and very inner, that is difficult to grasp, difficult to count, but probably makes the largest impact on the whole development of institutions and of, I would say, communities even. And Sibyl, in her presentation, had a very useful slide, I thought, on sustainable targets, and probably this slide would sum up our discussions in our discussion group. That, first of all, no matter what kind of projects educational institutions are involved in, it's very difficult to persist that they should look into sustainability, because projects are usually planned for a certain time. But still, in long-term projects, educational institutions, they develop kind of a cultural profile, but also they should understand that after a project, this profile is very useful for them, and partnerships between schools and cultural institutions become kind of everyday life, natural, and hopefully after the project or program is complete, schools cannot live without it, because they've gone through a change, and this culture agency in schools share experiences that are not easily forgotten, because they are not records, they are those emotional changes that we talked about. Of course, lucky are countries like Denmark or Germany that have, I hope, more sustainable funding for projects like that, and schools can apply for specific funds and organize cultural projects after those formal partnership projects are complete. And I guess this is a message to policymakers that sustainable funding is one of very important factors to continue the work and to make sure that all the impact that funded projects have in schools could have that longer-lived impact, if I may say so.